looking for me, son.
Who the fuck are you?
Everybody stay calm, because this man, ladies and gentlemen, is Tommy Shelby.
Who the fuck is Tommy Shelby?
Perhaps someone should explain to him who I am.
There are television shows, and then there are cultural movements. And Peaky Blinders was never just a show. It was a silhouette walking through smoke. It was razor blades stitched into flat caps. It was a haircut that traveled from Birmingham to Brooklyn, from Balsall Heath to Buenos Aires. Now, with the Immortal Man set to hit theaters on March 6, 2026, I can feel something shifting again. Not just excitement, not just nostalgia, a power transition. And if you think this is simply another franchise extension, I think you're underestimating what Stephen Knight is about to do. Because this isn't just a movie. This feels like a coronation. Before we begin, would you please support me? Subscribing is free and very important to me. For better analysis and more videos, please subscribe and like. Considering Peaky Blinders' global reach, the upcoming Netflix-backed film carries the kind of weight usually reserved for a new Downton Abbey installment or the next Bridgerton spectacle. The difference? This one carries concealed blades. And that anticipation is already being fueled by Peaky Blinders, The Real Story, a 1-hour documentary narrated by Robin Baxter. It follows the familiar documentary formula: talking heads, sweeping drone shots, archival clips, but beneath that conventional packaging is something more revealing. What struck me most is the acknowledgement that Peaky Blinders was peak television. Not just popular television, not trendy television, peak. A series that blurred the line between cinema and episodic storytelling. Critics have compared its ambition to The Godfather, Rio Bravo, even Heaven's Gate in terms of myth-building and generational storytelling. One critic described it as Stephen Knight's Once Upon a Time in the West Midlands. That comparison isn't accidental, because what Knight did wasn't just recreate Birmingham's working-class past. He mythologized it, and that's where this story really begins. Knight drew from stories passed down through his own family. He expanded them, amplified them, stylized them. What started as inherited memory became cultural phenomenon. Production designer Grant Montgomery recalls the early BBC days when sets were reused and budgets were tight. It wasn't prestige television yet, but it felt like it. Michael Keoghan praised the show's rebellious soundtrack, that anvil-crashing fusion of rock and modern pop layered over 1,920-second streets. That music wasn't period accurate. It was emotionally accurate. It turned Peaky Blinders into something timeless. And that's how it evolved into a brand that transcended networks. A subculture sustained by Cillian Murphy's razor-sharp presence and that unmistakable undercut hairstyle. Let's be honest. Tommy Shelby didn't just dominate Small Heath. He dominated fashion, music videos, Halloween costumes, and Instagram feeds worldwide. That level of cultural penetration doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the story taps into something primal. Power, trauma, loyalty, survival. Now we're heading into The Immortal Man. And here's where things get volatile. We already knew Barry Keoghan was joining the film. What we didn't expect was that he would be playing Duke Shelby. That reveal changes everything. Because Duke was introduced in Season 6 as Tommy's estranged son. Peripheral, unproven, observing from the edges. But as the series approached its climax, Duke showed potential, cold composure, ruthlessness, a willingness to step into darkness. The trailer for The Immortal Man suggests that potential has fully ignited. Duke isn't just participating anymore, he's leading. And if you pay close attention to the footage, you can see it. Ada Shelby says in the trailer, "Your gypsy son is running the Peaky Blinders like it's 1919. That line is explosive. 1919 was when the gang was raw, violent, unapologetic, before politics, before respectability, before Tommy attempted legitimacy. If Duke has dragged the organization back to its bloodier roots, that creates direct ideological conflict with his father. And the trailer doesn't hide that confrontation. There's a moment where Tommy slams his fist on a table as Duke stands across from him. No guns drawn, no shouting match, just tension, generational tension. This isn't just about control of a gang, this is about legacy. Tommy Shelby built an empire out of trauma and ambition. But empires eventually demand successors, and successors rarely mirror their predecessors. Barry Keoghan stepping into this role positions him as a potential heir not only within the narrative but within the franchise itself. Let's talk about that. We know Cillian Murphy's Tommy Shelby is expected to appear for the final time in The Immortal Man. The title alone suggests mortality, finality. If Tommy's journey ends here, the franchise must pivot. Duke becoming the head of the Peaky Blinders organization would make narrative sense. But that doesn't guarantee survival, because this is Peaky Blinders, and survival is never promised. The trailer shows Duke aligning with a fascist leader played by Tim Roth before confronting Tommy. That alliance suggests ambition or desperation. Is Duke consolidating power or making a fatal mistake? That's the brilliance of how this is being teased. We see just enough to speculate, not enough to conclude. And that restraint mirrors how Stephen Knight has always operated. He builds tension through implication. Now here's the deeper layer. Peaky Blinders has always reflected broader social shifts, industrial decline, political extremism, class struggle. If Duke is returning the gang to its 1919 brutality, is Knight commenting on cycles of violence? On how history repeats when leadership changes? Or is he suggesting that modernization diluted the gang's core identity? Think about it. Tommy tried to civilize the empire, politics, business deals, parliament. Duke appears to reject that. That ideological clash could become the emotional center of the film. Father versus son, past versus future, control versus chaos. And here's what fascinates me most. The documentary subtly highlights something Knight said: if you don't tell the stories of 70% of the population, you miss at least 70% of the country. That philosophy fueled Peaky Blinders, working-class narratives told with operatic grandeur. The Immortal Man has the opportunity to expand that further, possibly showing how power shifts within those communities across generations. But let's not ignore the practical side. This is Netflix-backed. The scale will likely increase. The cinematography will likely feel more cinematic than ever. The question is whether that expansion enhances intimacy or dilutes it. Because Peaky Blinders thrived on close-ups, on silence, on tension sitting at a table. If The Immortal Man leans too heavily into spectacle, it risks losing that DNA. But if it preserves that intensity while expanding scope, it could redefine what franchise continuation looks like. Now, here's something I want you to consider. If Duke survives and assumes control, would you follow him as the new central figure? Or is Peaky Blinders inseparable from Tommy Shelby? That's not just a fan question. That's a franchise-defining decision. Barry Keoghan has the intensity, the unpredictability, the edge, but stepping into Cillian Murphy's shadow is not a small task. Then again, maybe that tension is intentional. Maybe Duke isn't meant to replace Tommy. Maybe he's meant to destroy what Tommy built. And that possibility is even more compelling. Because if The Immortal Man truly lives up to its title, immortality might not refer to Tommy. It might refer to the legacy of violence, the ideology, the brand. Peaky Blinders returns to theaters March 6, 2026. And before that, the Real Story documentary drops February 23rd. The machine is moving again. And when Peaky Blinders moves, the industry pays attention. This isn't just a movie release. It's a cultural checkpoint. And when those opening frames hit the screen, we'll find out whether the Shelby dynasty evolves or devours itself. Either way, I'll be watching every frame, because movements don't die quietly. They either fade or they explode. This is Screen Radar. Stay sharp, stay dangerous, and I'll see you in Small Heath. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. This is where these kinds of films come to life. Until the next story, stay curious, be critical, keep your eyes on the screen, and remember, every film you haven't seen is a new film.